Hi everyone. Today let's talk about Boeing. Of course, we need to talk about their earnings, which came out much better than expected, thanks to the recovery of 737 MAX sales. Then of course, we'll go over the technical picture as well as where I think the stock is going over the next couple of months. Then I want to talk briefly about the S&Ps just because there is a little bit of technical risk here on the overall markets, which obviously affects individual stocks. Then we'll go over my current position, the current profit that it's in, and then of course the P&L graph representing my break-even point and potential profit areas. If you like stocks and options and making money, definitely like and subscribe. I make videos like this as well as portfolio overviews every single week, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future content. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. Looking at their earnings report and their rebound from their pandemic slumps, they've turned a profit for the first time in 6 quarters. You can see Boeing turned a much higher revenue number than expected, snapping a 6-quarter losing streak due to the higher revenues. They say Boeing turned a profit for the first time in almost 2 years, boosted by the surge of deliveries of their jetliners. They turned a profit of $567 million for the second quarter of 2021, which is a large swing from their loss of almost $3 billion in the quarter 1 year ago. Revenue rose 44% to nearly $17 billion from $11.8 billion the year earlier, beating estimates of $16.54 billion, representing an earnings per share of 40 cents versus the expected loss of 83 cents. So the revenue wasn't actually that different from what was expected, but they did turn a much better profit than expected, which caused the shares to rise 4.2%. For me, this represents a pretty large turning point for Boeing, and that as long as they continue on the track going forward, their profits and revenues will continue to grow back to pre-pandemic levels. They say while the full rebound has quite a ways to go, they see increasing travel demand, particularly in domestic markets, which is clearly a benefit for the 737 MAX, as that is primarily where it's used. Last year, they said they were going to slash jobs down to 130,000 by the end of 2021, but based on improved demand, they're going to keep around 10,000 extra employees, which further says that Boeing is growing in strength and confidence and could be turning a corner, in my opinion. They say deliveries of the 737 MAX have picked up after the crashes, which I have talked about extensively on this channel. They then say revenues in the airline industry have risen 270% from a year earlier to $6 billion, but still report some negative margins on this, which means they're really trying to get some airliners out the door to help increase their balance sheet. And as they get these off the books, they should be able to raise margins on these aircraft and start generating even larger profits. Of course, not everything is looking up for Boeing, as their 787 deliveries have been slashed for the next year or so, and they say they still need to be perfect with deliveries going forward to make sure that their QA/QC process is going well and that they have no issues on planes going forward. And they also say they need to continue to sell aircrafts to China to help generate further revenue. And China has still not lifted their ban on 737 MAXs, which is definitely making it harder for Boeing to move these aircraft with a profitable margin. Getting over to the charts here, you can see we are down at the lower end of this range that has been established and also sitting right around that 200 EMA and currently sitting above the 20 EMA, indicating at least a short-term bullish sentiment. In terms of the stochastics, it might be a little bit overbought here in the short term, but based on the trading range from around 270 down to 208 or so on that short-term move down, there's definitely some upside potential to around that same high price, maybe somewhere here at the end of August or mid-September. In my opinion, there's definitely more upside potential than there is downside risk here, and with the new surprise in profitability for Boeing, it seems like we've at least stabilized here near the 200 EMA, currently sitting at around $223 per share. Of course, my long-term high price here is still sitting around $300 by the beginning of next year, or at least March of 2022 for that $300 price range, at least on the current trajectory. Of course, it could always rocket up here much faster and then come back and kind of chop in here, but that's my current price target and time frame. Of course, I do want to mention the S&P 500 here, which seems to be entering some kind of bull flag here. This range that it's trading in continues to tighten from basically the beginning of the COVID rally up to somewhere around 4,700 would be the absolute peak if we manage to stay in this very tight range all the way to the peak before we broke out, which is usually not what happens. We see some kind of upward movement or downward movement before we decide which way we're going to break. And certainly it seems like there's much more downside risk than there is upside risk, especially if you look at the 1 week chart here. You can see it's been a massive rally and the EMAs are way down here, indicating a lot of downside risk if stocks decided to roll over. Quickly looking at the ATR range here for Boeing on the weekly chart, you can see it is in that lower area. We did touch that second lower ATR range just briefly, but we are trending up from there now, basically in the center of the range. And looking at the daily chart here, you can see we're basically at that first ATR range on the upside, but you can see the ATR levels on the upside are trending down and tightening briefly here as the top and bottom tighten, meaning that the volatility in the stock is reducing, and it may not be the best time to sell options, but in terms of price action, we're right in the middle of the range, which isn't a terrible time. Really, the best time would have been here when we were well beyond the lower ATR band, and we did see that rally all the way back up to around 235 within a short period of time. And then briefly looking at SPX on the ATR range, this is the weekly chart, and you can see we are right at the top of that ATR level, and we have been pretty extended here for a long time. Really entering here the top ATR band in December, saw a small retrace here, and basically bounced within that first upper band to that third upper band for quite a long time. Again, in my opinion, representing more downside risk than upside benefit here, and definitely keep an eye out for the potential rollover. As you can see, the 144 EMA here is down at 3,400, well below current prices, over 1,000 points below current prices. And even the next level here at the 89 EMA is still at 3,655. Representing large downside risks before we see any support from EMAs going forward. This is not to say that we're going to roll over anytime soon. Markets can often stay irrational significantly longer than you can wait for them to roll over and correct, but understand that we are in an area where downside risk seems substantial. Otherwise, looking at my current position, you can see the stock is currently at $231.33, $200 profit here out of a $469 potential, with an expiration here on September 10th. And if we look at the P&L graph here, you can see my break even is right at 210.42 or so, 210.33. So this is where I would effectively be buying the stock if it did plummet from current prices. So around a 10% cheaper price from current price. But if the stock continues to sit all the way up here, I'll take in that full profit of $468. And that's because I've rolled this position a few times, taking in larger credits each time. And if the stock continues to stay here or rally, I can get that full profit, which based on my position right here, I've put up $3,900 for this position. And that would represent over a 10% return at $468 versus the $3,900 that I had to put up to make this trade in around 33 days till expiration. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of my position in Boeing, or what you think of the charts going forward. Do you think Boeing will rally to 300, or is it going to get cut in half? Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future content. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes, and have a great day.